At the time of death, your body can't help you because it's failing. You know, your friends can't help you because they can't take this away. They can't go with us. You wouldn't want them to go with us. All that kind of stuff. Your money can't help you. It might help you have a great reputation at your funeral, but it absolutely there's nothing it can do for you. So really, it's your mind. It's how your mind and heart are. That's what's going to matter. How you can, and not just for having a positive mind at the time of death, so that helps actualize a positive karmic seed for your next, your fruitional karma to ripen. But also, what gives you peace at the time of death is not having, immense regrets about how you spent your life. So I had no idea this was up there. Okay, so we'll do a little short. I always try to gauge if they're going to be quiet or not. They're not going to read it. Closing the notes. So first, let's just settle in. And just try to let all the thoughts about getting here, the thoughts about later, even your questions about the readings, just let everything kind of fall to the background. All the inputs you're getting from your sense organs, let them just fall into the background. And we do that by not focusing on them. So an easy way to let them fall into the background is to put your focus on your breath. Just in and out, the tip of your nose, as your belly rises and falls. And don't worry about whether lots of thoughts arise. Just try not to follow them. Just let them pass through the mind like clouds in the sky. And try to generate a positive motivation and a positive intention to use your time well. So based on whatever reason brings you to class, and combine that intention with the wish that it benefit not only yourself, but that it ripples out to benefit others. So generally, we spend a lot of time in our minds planning the upcoming days, for the months, and even years. We make 5-year plans. And even though death is the only event that is certain to occur, we don't usually plan for it. We might not even think about it. But death is inevitable, it is certain. Even though there's 7 billion human beings on this planet, in 120 years, not one of them will be here. And for each of us, our lifespan is decreasing continuously. Time does not stand still. And we really don't have much time every day to work on our minds. So try to make a determination or resolve to spend more time working on what really is the support for all your good qualities. So taking care of how we think, how we respond in words and in actions. Is how we can protect ourselves from regret at the time of death. No matter what your age is now, how long you live is uncertain. Healthy people die before sick people, children before parents. Our bodies are very vulnerable. Everything that we need can also harm us. Food and medicine can kill us. Our shelters can fall down on us and kill us. The ground we walk on can turn to liquid. The causes of death are many. The causes for life are few. try to think about what will arise in your mind when it's your time to die. What kind of thoughts will be strongest? Will it be about the accumulation of wealth, things, or job titles? Or will you ask yourself if you were a good partner, or a good parent, or a good son or daughter? Were you helpful with others? Think about what you would be like, what you would like to be known for. Reflect on what you would like to cultivate. Thinking about death is not about generating fear. There's no point in the fear because there's simply nothing we can do about it. So right now, while we're still breathing, we can spend our time on those things that matter the most to us. So again, remember the reason that you came here this evening, and set a positive intention to use your time well. And then when you're ready, just gently open your eyes. So what comes to mind when you think about death?
That's the end.
That's that. Do any fears arise?
Just a few. Screaming anxiety.
Screaming anxiety.
For me, it's changing. I mean, as we're going through this, it's like I'm finding some real kind of peace with the whole notion. Particularly, because things like rebirth, they all not quite foreign to this Western mind. But as I kind of really learn more, I can really understand that my mind, that dying, physical form dying, just gives me an opportunity for another precious human rebirth, so I can continue to serve other sentient beings in my next life.
So let's all rejoice for Ralph.
That's so nice.
That's so nice. That's good. I mean, you know, so this is the idea behind it. Yes. So
I'd like to ask Ralph, do you feel like you're accumulating enough merit to earn
I have no idea.
to what?
earn
It's not like that. So that brings up a very good point. It's not like we have to earn.
learn
What we want to do is develop habits that are so strong with how we think that even at the time of death, those habits will be present in our mind. So if we have if we cultivate a strong habit of thinking positive thoughts, unlike grumpy me, grumpy for like 2 months, it's pathetic. You know, we really want to work on recognizing that, you know, the more we try to let go of any habit energy that is, you know, steeped in guilt or in complaining or in focusing on the negative things that we notice, all of those habits are really not helpful. Those are all conditions for a negative seed to ripen at the time of death. So the more we can practice being open to whatever's going on and be okay with that, not being grumpy, not being, judgmental, or, if we have so many expectations and then those don't work out, that kind of negative energy, because that's what's going to determine, the mind, the habits we have will determine what is, that's what creates the condition for a positive seed to ripen. So it's really just habit. It doesn't matter how many eons of negative actions we've done. But the important thing is the habit of mind we're cultivating in this life so that it's present at the time of death.
Yeah, that's something I found very helpful. Just realizing that.
Yeah, so it really isn't about, there's no way I can catch up. I have those moments where it's like, okay, shoot, I grew up in New Orleans. I have so much purification to do. I mean, it's pretty hopeless. So, but we don't have to look at it that way. Yeah.
Wouldn't we have done it before?
Yes. See, one of the really good news is, here we are, we all have what we would call, that falls into that category of precious human rebirth. So we not only have a human life, we've met the teachings, we have the leisure and free time to study the teachings. Hey, you did it last time. Your last moment of death was done very successfully because you were here. So we've done something right. So we just need to, this is about cultivating confidence in our Buddha nature, our Buddha potential, as opposed to cultivating confidence in our, uselessness. That doesn't help us at all. The fact that we make mistakes, that's all right. Focusing on the mistakes is not helpful. Learning from them is helpful, but sitting there feeling like I'm doomed because, I keep making mistakes, that is not helpful. In fact, that state of mind is sort of a negative judgmental thought about yourself. And that's not the kind of mind you want at the time of death. So the more that you can go notice your good qualities, notice your desire to keep improving on those, your desire to let go of your bad habits, all of those things are, we need to develop some confidence, some self-confidence, not ego, not pride, not anything, but just some self-confidence in our Buddha potential. We have what we need in order to develop and cultivate habits that will work in our favor. So, but it is about noticing, I have a tendency to dwell on what's wrong, not what's right. And then really trying hard to interrupt that and try to, shift it. And one really effective way, and I'm trying to remind myself of in this moment, is gratitude. Really just every time you tend to go towards the negative, is just remember all the stuff that is supporting you, whether it's that you have friends or that you have, your car didn't break down today, or, whatever it is. There are many, many things to have gratitude for. And they don't have to be big things, because if you look at refugee camps, little things matter. So it's just, it's just recognizing that you can cultivate a habit of focusing on the positive. That's doable. It takes effort, especially if that's not your current habit. So you have to overcome the old habit, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible. We have that ability. We just need to encourage ourselves to, bring it to mind more often. So that's a really good question about this, burning. Yes.
Where does sadness and sorrow come?
Well, it comes in samsara. That's sort of the nature of samsara, isn't it? That's one of the things we want to understand. Is due to our ignorance and our grasping at a self, we really cause this separation. So we have, Buddhists don't die and they don't lose their loved ones. They're out of samsara. We only lose those things because we keep grasping as a self is somehow separate from everything else. And we develop some really not so kind habits out of the need to protect that self, the need to protect what we consider to be mine.
You're going to miss, you're going to miss the people, or you're going to miss the earth.
Yeah, but you see, that's not going to happen once you're out of samsara. You will not lose anyone again. Because you can't really lose them now, because it's not like they die. This is weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a huge difference picture. So it takes some really, so when you read about, that the mind is beginningless and endless, and that at the time of death, what ripens is your next life, that means none of us ever go away. What goes away is the story we're gripping so tightly, because that never existed to begin with. That's completely based on this false assumption of how we exist. So it takes a long time to kind of keep all this in our mind. Just the knowledge itself is hard to keep track of. It takes a while to kind of understand the Buddhist view covers existence. So there's a lot of information. Stay tuned. But it's like these simple little things like, okay, what is the consequence of rebirth? Well, one of the consequences is no one dies. There's no final, we don't cease. We just change hotels. Okay? And when we're finally liberated, we don't even need a hotel. No point in saving your money for that. You don't need it. So it's a really hopeful view, because it's not about loss. It's actually about understanding we are creating the experience of loss based on a false premise. And when we remove that ignorance, we will not have that experience. And we will discover that every mind that we encounter now, we've encountered many, 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 many times. From life to life. In all the different forms. Because we've had time. Because no beginning's a lot of time. And this, of course, is how we experience things. It's sort of a linear time. And for scientists, try to explain to us how it's not even like that. And I can't even watch, little cute little animated things to try to explain that to me without kind of going, okay, it still feels like magic. It's still kind of, but I still like watching them. But so who knows, once our wisdom increases and we have realizations, how we'll understand how things actually exist. So we don't need to be too caught by our view, because our view is entirely based, according to the Buddha, on this ignorant perspective of how we exist. Oh, yes.
So I'm still slightly stuck on the concept from previously. I'm trying to figure out what the nature of a Buddha is. So is the mind of a Buddha permanent?
Nothing's permanent. But
Nothing's permanent.
Right. So, but what is permanent are true sensations. So what a Buddha is a being a mind that at one time had all the stains of mind that we have now, all our mistaken states of mind, the ignorance, blah, 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 blah. But that mind has had realizations and has acquired true cessations, which means that mind is free from all ignorance, all mistaken states of mind, all negative states of mind. Those simply have no foundation anymore, cannot arise. That's permanent. That cessation is permanent. So
once you achieve enlightenment,
you can't go back.
that's good news too.
Yeah, it's eternal. It's just
the end game.
Yeah. So it's just that, just like all mind, it's momentary. But we have ignorance influencing our mind. A Buddha has ceased that. It no longer has that influence in its mind at all. It's no longer controlled by physics like we are. It can emanate whatever it wants to, whenever it wants to, without effort. Basically, it just, when you're enlightened, you suddenly are present everywhere. Because you have no physical boundaries. This is why you're omniscient. Because that's why there's no ignorance, because you're present everywhere.
What's been helpful for me is to consider enlightenment, that close as well, as aspirational. That it's not something that may have not for eons, who knows, if ever. So
No. It's really important to just see it as someday.
Okay. But I just want to quickly clarify about, because I don't want to sound like I'm like I get all this,
No worries. I wouldn't be able to see you if you could get it.
So it's just that, in the teachings, we said investigate for yourself, investigate for yourself.
Right.
And as I investigate, right, as I look at quantum physics, as I look at the course of human history, if I actually look at the animal blessing, if I really look at nature and interbeing and interdependence, it seems like that's what the Buddha Mind taught actually may be. And as I adopt it, it makes me feel really comfortable with the notion of doing good for the sake of doing good, but also so I can continue in those ways Paul said, it's true.
Right. I mean, so this is the thing, is we do investigate. We also have to find out, if our disposition of mind is suited to this tradition, because an enlightened being has lots of ways to try to reach us, lots of, and we have to, not everybody's suited to this tradition, so that's not to worry. That's what, it's just about, we have to find a way that we can feel like this is worth pursuing, because we need to, pursue it. It's effortful. It's not effortless. But if it suits us, if it fits us, then we'll be able to keep going forward. So certain things, like, reasoning and all that, I'm a big arguer from way back, so that suits me. We just have to find, and to me, it's believable. I completely can go with the idea that we're creating all our own suffering. I have no trouble with that. I just, so, but that doesn't work for everyone. So
I can't just add one more thing, that is really getting to look at the nature of consciousness and our physical limitations in terms of understanding consciousness.
we don't have any limitations in understanding our consciousness. It's our ignorance that limits us. But we have the capacity to understand it, and that just takes time and study and effort and all that other wonderful stuff. So, I sent you in the email that goes out tonight or tomorrow. I'm sending a link. That's a story that Rinpoche's attendant wrote about him. That's just wonderful. It's because it's really a good illustration of how you practice for the time of death. He doesn't waste a moment of time. So anyway, so Rinpoche says, if you don't practice the good heart, loving kindness, compassion, or bodhicitta, you finish up living with only delusions, attachment, anger, and so forth in a world of hallucination. So this gets at this idea about, when you read Rinpoche, there's a lot of reference to, it's a hallucination. We're just hallucinating. And it's just our superstitious minds. And this gets at our ignorance. The fact that what we see, how we see it, how it appears to us is wrong. And so it's not that things don't exist, but it's like a hallucination, in that it is being completely constructed by our habits, our filters. So, like loss. That loss occurs because we think in terms of first linear and a beginning and an end, and we hold things to be permanent. Part of what appeals to us about things that are appealing to us is this idea that they can be permanent. And of course, that's not true. So it's, and in fact, it's like our habit of taking photographs, as if somehow we can make a moment permanent. But of course, our photograph's never of the moment we were trying to capture, because that moment's gone. We're on to the, 5 or 6 or in my case, 74 minutes later. But, that every moment of enjoyment is a moment. It's just a moment. So we don't have to worry about making it permanent. The less we worry about making it permanent, we actually experience it. So, it's like when you think about picking up that camera, you have to recognize you're no longer living your moment. You're trying to capture it. But this is what we do. We hold things in our mind. That's the language they use. We talk about objects of mind. How you apprehend an object of mind. How are you holding that object with your mind? That every moment of mind has an object. And they say we have 65 moments of mind in a finger snap. That's how fast it's all happening.
Can I ask a question?
Yes?
How would you define visualization in that context? I seem to associate holding something with your mind as a visualization. Is that?
Yeah, because we also hold ideas. That isn't a visualization at all, but it's a meaning image or generality, or, it's we have ideas of things that we hold, but it's that quickly. It just means that all thoughts have an object. All, it's just like with our eye awareness, there's a visual object it's holding. Our ears the same way. So it's not, it only becomes important. It's like when we were talking, I don't know when, it's some class sometime, about, like when anger's arisen, and then you decide to kind of step back and look at it, so that anger at first is not the object of the mind, it's the state of mind that is holding a source of anger. That we think, whatever happened, the broken cup, the idiot who dropped the cup, whatever it is we're holding as a source of anger, is our object. And the state of mind is anger, then But then if we step back and we make the anger our object, so that anger loses some of its immediacy, some power, and then we can look at it and go, well, this isn't serving me well. I think I'll wait till this moment passes, kind of thing. So, so this idea of object-subject is useful when we're investigating our states of mind. But it doesn't have to be visual. Sometimes it is, like if you're trying to remember what, your car looks like in the parking lot. If you can't find it, that can be helpful. Okay, so we ended last week with what 6 disadvantages of not thinking about death. This was that, we fail to recall the Dharma. We fail to practice the Dharma. If we do practice it, we don't practice it correctly. Our practice lacks intensity because we don't have that feeling of urgency. And we continue to create negative karma because we kind of think our moments of actions are very important, instead of recognizing we are feeding a habit of some sort in every moment. And at the time of death, we recognize it's too late to practice and we die in a state of regret. Well, this is not a pretty picture. So let's look at the advantages of remembering. Oh, this, I love Rinpoche's quote. It's as if you're asleep from birth to death, never seeing the reality of life, and then all of a sudden death comes. The advantages of remembering death is that our lives can become purposeful. It's also the most powerful destroyer of ignorance, attachment, aversion, and all the other causes of suffering that reside within us. Have y'all ever had an experience of someone close to you dying? Did you have an experience during that time of sort of everything becoming clear to you about what's important and what isn't? Where it's suddenly like, all sorts of little worries, that can be, sometimes, just under the grip of them, all of a sudden just do not faze us because they're so not important. This is how we can, if we remember our own impermanence, the impermanence of our loved ones, this can help motivate us to focus on what's important and let go of what isn't. So all those irritations, annoyances, become smaller because you are feeding what's important. At the beginning of our practice, it inspires us to practice. In the middle, it encourages practicing intensely and purely. And at the end, it inspires us to attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. And it allows us to die happily and without regret. And these are things between now and the time we actually have any realizations where we have the faith of conviction because we now know something to be correct. It is this idea that even if this is it for me, this is enough. The thought of helping me remember what's important so I can let go of what's not important and, have fewer regrets. And then at the time of death, not be like, oh, I have so many regrets. That to me is, good news.
Purely and number 4.
Purely means without attachment, all the things that contaminate our actions, that we correct our motivation when we do things. So it's not about our reputation or it's not about what's in it for us. It's about helping others, without that quality. It just means that we keep trying to work on it. We can't get there until we have some realizations because it'll all be contaminated with our ignorance. But that's okay. We don't want it, though, to become another practice of greed. We're just ticking all the boxes, so we're accumulating merit as if it's some sort of, thing. Like, I can't think of a thing.
Boy Scout merit badges.
Boy Scout merit. Yes. There's nothing wrong. We encourage ourselves to rejoice over all the good things we do. It's just that we don't want it to become a form of afflicted pride. We want to rejoice in it because we want to encourage ourselves to keep doing it. And also, if you rejoice in other people's merit, you get some of it. So there's always in it something for us, but that's not why we want to do it. We rejoice in other people's merit because, we recognize how wonderful it is. And instead of being jealous and wanting to be, kind of diminish the positive things that they've done, we want to see it as wonderful, as opposed to a competition. So that's part of that practice purely, not turning it into poison. And then when we turn it into poison, recognize it and, try to do better. It's a process. Yes.
This might be a little cryptic, but it seems to me that the effectiveness of the practice of remembering death is due to provocation to the ego. It's a way of poking the ego and saying, respond.
Well, the ego won't respond in a helpful way. We have to be able to separate the I that does things and the ego that, gets puffed up about it.
What I'm saying is it's almost a way of saying, I threat, I'm threat. It's a way of forcing the person to say, I better act now because I'm going to die.
All of which is true. That's why it's not like a threat. It's a promise. Because it isn't untrue that you'll run out of time. So we can see it as an encouragement not to waste our lives.
It's actually making you more conscious.
Yes, it's because, if it wasn't true, then you're using fear as a tactic, kind of like, get with the program. It's really that we don't miss out on this precious opportunity because it will end. So if you want to protect yourself from future suffering, the time to start is now. So it's not that only others will benefit, you will also benefit. So it's sort of like saying, how when when a young person does something and they're going to regret it. Boy, are they going to regret it. And there's just nothing you can do about it. They'll learn, but it's just sort of like, oh, I'm so sorry. This is, the teachers are trying to help us understand. They don't want that to happen to us, to meet that point of death, because we've done it time and again. We want to really make best use so that we hit another good life and keep slowly reducing more and more of our suffering, cultivating our good habits, so that eventually we don't have suffering at all. I would like that state, but I find now just reducing the amount of regret I have is an improvement. Hopefully someday I'll be, it'll be more rejoicing than not having so many regrets. But I'm not there yet. So, there we go. Have to start where you are. Yeah.
I spent a year and a month, I think, without flushing toilets. And it's amazing how much gratitude I had when I came back for indoor plumbing. So gratitude is a weird thing because you're never grateful for things until you feel like you're going to or have lost them for some time. And I think that's part of what thinking about death does for us, is it reduces those extra bits, the stuff the accretions that we tend to pile onto everything. Well, it makes us look at the essential.
Well, that's the point, is that we have a habit of thinking getting everything comfortable and just like we like it is going to make our lives feel satisfying at the end. And it's not true. It's just not true. It's not that those good, comfortable conditions harm us in some way. It's that that's not what contentment comes from. So how we gather those good things, comfortable things, whatever, matters. It's like most people, my father was certainly of that generation where, the husband went off to work and worked, and worked, and, he happened to travel on his job, so you never saw him, and and that was his job, and the mom stays home and tries to get you to grow up to be a normal person, and I know, because I spent the last 3 years of his life with him, I know he regretted spending all that time away. It's like, and he would advise the younger people that worked in the same office to not do that. Because, sure, it has some benefits, but not the right kind. It's that kind of understanding is trying to make us realize that what we're chasing after may not bring us anything that we think it will. So we want to look and keep checking. Yep.
So thinking about impermanence,
yep,
that seems to be the start or the beginning to understanding that about dying. It's I think once I understand the concept of impermanence, it sort of gives me
as long as you include you in that picture. Yep. Yeah.
So that's sort of a good start.
Well, yeah, and I mean, yeah, and you'll get a meditation on that. But, it's this trying to become aware. Of course, that's really about gross impermanence. Our deaths are kind of a gross impermanence. Whereas, our bodies are actually impermanent moment to moment, just like everything else. So we want to get a feel for both. And eventually we want a realization of subtle impermanence where we really we have the experience of the fact that things change moment to moment. So just like, we get kind of disappointed when we break our favorite things. We need to remember we break. That, you might worry about that car that just got a dent, but, it's really not so important in the scheme of things. So, all those people who drive like they're going to live forever, their priorities are upside down. Having the fast car, the cool car, the noisy car, all of that stuff. Young people die. Sorry, guys. So this is just an encouragement. And I mean, I get your point about it. It's also kind of like this, and the Tibetan teachers do use a lot of fear. They like talking about hell realms. Westerners, it doesn't work so well.
I looked at the hell realms after you mentioned them last time. Yeah, I don't recommend it. Yeah. Ooh, they're very, but don't worry, you've survived them in the past. You'll survive them again in the future. So nothing to worry about. Nothing's permanent. Everything changes. But they do last a long time.
Yeah, but you won't notice. Do you even remember? But I do think the closer your life is to survival, the more those help. Because, we feel like we can fall pretty far and still not be in the hell realms. We're wrong, but that's what we do. Okay, so this is this is what really, the fundamental thing to do in order to have no worries, no fears, for there to be nothing that ties our mind, we have to give up attachment. We don't have to give up love. We have to give up attachment, that clinging attachment, because everything we cling to, we are going to lose. And that right there is a suffering mind. And the clinging at the time of death, this isn't in this course, but the 12 links that keep us in cyclic existence, craving and grasping are the things that propel us from birth to birth to birth to birth, which means there's a gap in between each one. So this clinging to things. And it can be, it can also, you know, aversion is just a different type of attachment. It's just wanting to be separated from something. But it's still that same, I have to be separated from it. It's got the same intensity as I have to have it. So it's like our bodies. You know, we may not be thrilled with our bodies, you know, but we don't even see it for what it is, which is really kind of disgusting. So it is. It's like this, you know, like, oh, I don't, you know, so.
Often thought it was flawed design.
But you know, it's like, remember that exhibit where they took all the humans and so you could see what was inside? You take this, and it's really kind of funny. You know, we are born into the desire realm. That's what, you know, the name that the Buddha gave to our particular world of existence as opposed, you know. And nothing can make that more obvious than our desire for each other's bodies. It's like really kind of hilarious, you know, if you really think about it. It's so clearly physiologically driven in the sense that we're built for that. I mean, that's, you know, so, but if you really let yourself look at what we find sexually attractive, what we find, you know, it's really hilarious. You know, you'd be embarrassed to have, you know, your thoughts, you know, although we do put them up on the screen, you know, for everybody to see. But I mean, it's just like, really? You know? And so we do an awful lot to try to make it so we don't look like who we are, you know, what we are good, you know? So part of the practice about letting go of attachment and clinging is to really start looking at things for what they actually are. So if you're under the spell of infatuation or something, then you really want to look at, you know, especially if you're not in a relationship with the person, it's just, you're just thinking about that body over there that's so appealing to you, is to really, you know, deconstruct that, you know, so you can understand that this, you know, how ridiculous it is that you can't control yourself over this. You know, and the same thing with food. I mean, it's like, you know, we all know we don't like to look at the food in the toilet after the fact. You know, it's the same thing. You know, it's just, you know, it's not so appealing now, is it? You know, but and this is the process to keep the body alive. Oh, that's attractive. You know, so, you know, we want to really look at what's important about food. It sustains the body. So all this attraction we have to tasty food and appealing food, you know, blah, 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 so-called healthy food versus unhealthy food, da, 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 da. You know, it boggles the mind how much time we waste on this. You know, if we can just start to look at it as, oh, this is what sustains my body for life. You know, the stories we make up around it are something else entirely. Doesn't mean we can't enjoy food. It's this, you know, like, oh, if I have to eat the same thing again, I'll lose my mind, you know. Really? Really? You know, so it's just about being able to counter the things we cling to. Doesn't mean we can't enjoy the things that we like. It's just not this grasping we do. So here's one of the Buddhist lists, as we have so many. So the way to practice, the time of death, they talk about the 5 powers of the time of death. They're the same 5 powers, they're in a different order. And so this is like shorthand for how you should live. So it's the power of intention, the power of training, the power of the white seed, the power of blaming the self-centered mind, which is also known as the power of destruction, and the power of prayer.
What is white seed?
we'll go through them all. I will bore you with every detail. So, the power of intention is what we try to do at the beginning of any activity. You know, it can be called the power of planning or the power of motivation. The reason we're putting all these in there is because you will see it many different ways in different texts and stuff. So, and also to help you get the idea of what it is. So it's the power of the attitude. So this is where we check our motivation all the time. We just try to be aware. Why am I doing this? You know, if His Holiness was here, would I still do it? Yeah. Doesn't mean if we don't have the perfect motivation, we stop doing something that's beneficial. It's more of just trying to keep polishing up our attitude, to remove our egos out of it. So it's not about our reputation, not about what we gain, not about, you know, whatever, you know, so that we can keep it, you know, oh, I really want the mind that is generous. I really want a mind that is patient. I really want a mind that's ethical. It's not about how others see me. So set the intention to be really careful for how many seconds there are from now until the time of death. To be able to recognize the signs at the time of death and immediately and easily think these thoughts depends on having practiced every day, and especially so when you are sick. We just want it to be habitual, you know, so that you just do it without thinking. Just like, you know, you don't leave the house without brushing your teeth. You know, you just remember to do this. And then you won't have to think of it. You just will do it. You just will be what you do. The power of training is called the power of acquaintance or the power of familiarity. So in life, train yourself to do all activities with the mind of bodhicitta. What's bodhicitta? It helps if you know what it is.
It's the wish to attain enlightenment, so you can help other beings attain enlightenment as well.
Yes, so it's the wish to become enlightened, to be able to bring all other sentient beings to enlightenment. So it's for the benefit of all sentient beings. So it's the wish to accomplish your own welfare, which is, you know, to fulfill your Buddha potential, so that you can bring others to that same state. A lot of times it's used interchangeably with great compassion. You know, great compassion being universal for every being. But it's really the combination of great compassion with the highest intention, you know. So it's not just wanting to make everybody happy in the moment. It's wanting to give everybody the causes for happiness and show them how to eliminate the causes of suffering. And so, again, this is that habitual. So if you combine this with the power of intention so that everything you do is for the benefit of, you know, will this help me become enlightened? Is this in the right direction towards enlightenment? You know, so having that idea, that's why I sent you a link about the story about Rinpoche, because, you know, not that we may be able to transform our minds that far in this life, but he's an example of someone who's successful with this. So we can see it in action. The white seed is the accumulation of merit. So we do want to spend more time accumulating merit than accumulating negativities. And we also want to learn to purify our negative actions before they ripen. So the next course is karma, and so we'll discuss how to purify also. But sometimes we have these visualization meditations where you visualize receiving the light from enlightened beings and purifying all of our actions of body, speech, and mind. It's the same idea. It's really about, for one thing, one of our major obstacles to transforming our minds is thinking we can't do it. You know, there's no way I can do it. And the more we can let go of that decision, the more able we are actually to do it. You know, because as soon as we tell ourselves, I'm not capable, basically we're not capable. So it's really important to recognize that not only can we transform our minds, it's up to us. It takes our will. Talk a lot about political will these days. We have a political will. It's the same kind of thing. We have to want to do it. And one of the obstacles is thinking that we cannot do it. And according to the teachings, we absolutely have the capacity, because our mind, like everything else, is impermanent. It is totally changeable. And our mind is not harmed by our negative habits. They can be removed, you know, to where you just don't do them anymore. The power of blaming the self-centered mind. So if you happen to be one of these people who tends to be self-judgmental a lot, the thing you can blame is your self-centered mind, you know, as opposed to you, you know, is just a label on top of a body and mind that's impermanent from moment to moment. You can blame the habit of self-centeredness. Because self-centeredness is this, I am the center of the universe. Everything is about me. And feeding what we like and staying away from what we don't like, all these kinds of habits are all about self-centeredness. So when we examine where all our problems in this life have come from and the source of all problems we will face during death and in our next life, we will see that it all comes down to the self-centered attitude. Yes?
So someone who's made the realization of shunyata will have gone a long way towards being ready.
If you've had a realization of emptiness, then that directly opposes self. You now know how things exist. So you have no self to grasp. That's wisdom. That's the wisdom piece. Self-centeredness is totally based on the ignorance that grasps at an independent, self-sufficient, substantially existent person that is permanent, fixed, you know, is established by a certain nature. And that's where all of our negative or incorrect states of mind arise from. So once we have a realization of that, this will cease to be a problem for us. But to get there, we need to have enough merit to remove the obstacles to have wisdom. They work together. You know? That part of the reason we can't see how things actually exist is because we're blocked by the self-cherishing mind. The self-cherishing mind doesn't want to see that because it sees annihilation at that. It's misunderstanding how it exists. That's what ignorance does for us. Its function is to make us unhappy. It separates us from happiness, I think is how it's defined. So, so they work together. So what we can think, is when we recognize we're under the grips of that self-centered mind, that's what we can be angry at. If we want to pick something to be angry at, it's that mind, that attitude, that habit, not something out here. It's within us. If you cannot separate you from this mind, it's probably not a good idea. Because we need to develop a healthy sense of self that can accept the possibility of Buddha potential. So this all gets back, to the 8 worldly concerns. That this is the fuel. This is, we, from our ignorance, we do everything we can to get what we like, to be separated from what we don't like, to get, to build up our reputation, our ego, because we think that's what's important to our happiness. So it's the 4 pairs of gain and loss, pleasure, pain, good reputation, bad reputation, praise and criticism. This also gets back to being able to have your own sense of, being able to assess your own actions clearly, so that you don't need validation from someone else. So you can recognize with ease, oh, I made a mistake, or, oh, that's the way I want to go. You don't have to, see, society doesn't have to support your decisions. I can pretty much guarantee that most parents don't want their kids to become monks or nuns in any country in the world. I mean, so society doesn't have to support your decisions. It's about knowing, developing your own inner wisdom and being able to be a accurate self-judge of your actions of body, speech, and mind, as opposed to worrying about all, what the newspapers are going to say about you. So, and they're called worldly. This is jargon. Worldly means things that are about this life. They don't have any super mundane view. They're not about anything but, the happiness, the temporary happiness of this life. If you think that the purpose of life is only to find day-to-day comfort for yourself, this selfish attitude itself is a painful mind. The nature of this mind is painful, so you won't find any rest in your heart. No peace. And this is something we need to get familiar with, because we don't really see it that way. We see it as a driving force to accomplishment. That we need to understand this, this constant seeking of comfort. It means we're constantly craving, and craving doesn't feel good. And then we need it. It's like, yay, for like what? About that length of time. Yay. And then we're craving the next thing. So we really want to focus in on, according to the teachings, it's our altruistic mind. It's our mind of wanting to benefit others. It's cherishing others instead of the self. That's what exchanging self and other means. Instead of cherishing ourselves, we cherish others. We exchange self for other. So it's a different orientation to what brings us happiness. And most of us have a certain element of this. I mean, we're raised in a society that really encourages us to be charitable, to volunteer, all this kind of stuff. So, and that's a good thing. And it's just that we need to, we want to make that self-actualizing, instead of others, instead of like our parents telling us to go do it. And we need to recognize, get more in tune with how we feel when we do it. To recognize, that sense of satisfaction and meaningfulness, purpose, those kinds of feelings. And this doesn't have to be outside of our family. It's just that we want to recognize that just like we want to take care of our family, everybody is part of a family. We don't need to see differences between our family, my family, and yours. And then the power of prayer. This is all about developing a really strong habit. So if you're in a car wreck on your way home, please try to remember bodhicitta. You know, that you make, they say that our prayers are the bridge from this life to the next. So, you know, we want our aspirational prayers to be focused in the right direction, you know, so where we, yeah.
Now you hit on the thing that scares me about dying, which is I've seen several people in, you know, my mother when she was dying, other people when they were very ill and thought it was concerned they might die, that kind of thing. And very rarely in Western society do we let people die with clear minds.
Well,
and I think about that, and I think about the amount of pain and the amount of drugs and what kind of state of mind are you in when you die at that point?
you have to think about that. It's something to think about, you know. And one of our things that we have a tendency to do, we take an aspirin. You know, we medicate right away. We don't let ourselves tolerate even the smallest of discomforts. We want to look at that. Because at the time of death, there's a possibility that you're going to have lots of discomfort. And if you can't tolerate it, then it might be best for you to be drugged past the point of, you know, whatever, awareness, because you're going to be just craving relief, you know. So it's wise. This is one of those ways we can practice now, is to learn how to tolerate physical discomfort.
But there's lots of situations in which you aren't given any choice.
Yeah, well, we can't do much about that, can we? So why worry? I'm not kidding. I mean, it's sort of like all you can do is
that's
not.
what I do.
Well, you can change that. I mean, and this is one of those habits we want to work on because it doesn't help at the time of death. You know, it's like we can do the best we can in giving our advance directives, all that kind of thing. Also know ourselves, you know, and also this is not something we necessarily can do for others. They have to make their own decisions about it, you know, so we can't force our views on someone else.
It's a very hard, it's very hard in the modern Western medical system.
And we created the cause for that. So we just have to work with it. But it doesn't mean just because you take medicine, partly because we actually allowed people to take pain medicine. For a long time, it was sort of like, I'm sorry, you might become an addict. And we don't care that you're on your deathbed, you know. And there is a difference between stopping pain and being drugged out of your mind. So, you know, it just depends. You might be one of the fortunate ones that responds to a certain medication that doesn't drug you out to make you not be able to think at all, but that does numb the pain, you know. And then there are other types that aren't. And right now we're in a pain med crisis where it's not available to, you know, so it's tricky. But mostly, that's something you want to work on as far as so that you can make your choice about how clear-headed you want to be. And that some of that comes from being able to tolerate discomfort now. You know? And this is where meditation can be so helpful because most of us experience discomfort when we meditate. You know, or this hurts or that hurts, you know, and if you can stay still and wait till it passes, you are practicing tolerating discomfort. So it's a good habit. You know, it's an opportunity to practice with it. You know, so that habit we have of noticing discomfort and immediately trying to fix it, we want to be aware that we're doing that because this is following our craving. I want to be separated from this discomfort. Yes.
What's the difference between a prayer like this and the power of intention?
Intention is more of something you're going to do. Prayer is a wish. Intention is saying, I'm going to do this. I'm going to pay attention in class and try to understand as much as I can. I'm going to try to ask questions when I need to. You know, those are things we're going to do. They're not wishes. Prayers are really about, may I be, may I do this.
Who are they addressed to? Or what are they addressed to?
Well, yourself, it's a reminder to yourself. It's setting your determination for some long-term future time. May I develop this habit of always thinking of bodhicitta. May I, so it's more general than an intention before an activity. But it becomes an intention the closer you are to death, so, but it's this, they say, basically they say prayers are wishes. Yeah.
Would a Buddhist nun go to someone's deathbed like a priest would do?
Well, yeah, it doesn't, we don't have quite the same purpose. Okay. But sure.
You're not going to God, you're going to heaven, you're moving on. So like when you put somebody
what you try to do at the time of death, and if you're near the time of death or think you might be, we have sort of what I call the Red Bible, which I really don't mean disrespect by that, but Lama Zopa Rinpoche put a book out a couple of years ago on how to bring a loved one to, or I don't know what it's called now. I know the working title originally was something, how to have your loved one enjoy death, and they maybe decided that wasn't such a great title. But but it's but it's red with gold, gold, the leaves of the pages are gold, just reminds me of Bible. Anyway,
yes.
So it has all this stuff in it, but it has a lot of stuff. But one of the main things you want to do for yourself and with others is that you do not want to be upset around someone who's dying. You don't want to be a condition for their attachment to arise or for their worry about you to arise. You want them to create as peaceful and as unclingy, and just that, you did a great job. We're all going to be okay kind of atmosphere. We don't want to argue. So as soon as you start to get overcome with your own, sense of loss or grief, it's good to leave the room. Because that just makes them clingy. And it's selfish. I mean, when it comes down to it, you're worried about you. So.
And that's why you brought up Saturday. When an animal or someone dies, you don't touch them right away. You give them space.
Well, you want that consciousness to leave naturally. So there's a lot about that too. So at the time of death, and we're going to go through that next week. What happens as we're getting close to death? How the consciousnesses start to, our gross consciousness, cease, and our subtle consciousness is what goes to the next life. And so at the time of what we would call death in Western medicine is not what is called death in Buddhism, that the consciousness stays with the body for a period of time. And great yogis could say in meditation on the clear light of death for weeks. So, and their bodies don't decay at all, but they don't register any activity, their brainwave stuff. But according to Buddhism, there's still a consciousness present in the body, as long as the body's not decaying. Did they, as the body starts to decay, that's a sign that the consciousness is left the body because it's not alive. I mean, basically, you're dead when the consciousness is not longer present.
Is that why you brought up 49 days?
Yes.
Prayer.
Yes, we'll talk all about that, about the intermediate state. Yes.
Do our prayers for people who've passed on benefit them in any way?
They say that they can for 49 days.
But after that,
They've taken a new life. So then you have to pray for their future. Hope you're having a good one.
I mean,
But what they say is people, if you have a strong connection, which we do, the people in our lives, or they wouldn't be in our life. So we have, we've developed some kind of karmic connection. So in recent lives, so they're in our lives now, that our prayers for them are from people you have, like, unlike the monk or nun who doesn't know you from Adam shows up, their vows give their prayers some weight. But really, it's the people you have karmic connections to. So it's your friends and loved ones. If they pray for you, that can change the conditions of your rebirth. They say that the bardo for the desire realm beings, or not the desire realm. Well, yes, form and formless realms don't go through the bardo. They don't pass go, don't collect $200. They go straight to the next life. But the rest of us go through an intermediate state. And during that time, our prayers are all about these 5 powers. So we remind them of all their good qualities, all their good habits, encourage them to keep them up, and if they have some regret that is a positive regret, like a friend of mine died who was the chaplain at the Kadampa Center, and she said, she goes, I really feel confident that I've got compassion down, but emptiness, not so much. She said, so please remind me, don't skip this next life, because so she completely, was very sad to leave her current life. She died young to me, because I'm older than she is now. So, but she was really looking forward to it. She felt like my bags are packed, I'm ready for the next thing. So it is so cool. It is. So you really can, if you quit clinging to having to know what tomorrow's going to look like, it frees you up to, so they say our prayers can help during that time, but not the kind of prayers, oh, I miss you, blah, blah, blah. That's all about you. And that just encourages attachment. If someone dies with a very, very, very strong attachment, they may take, I don't know if they call it rebirth, but they may get caught in the spirit realm. And that's harder to get out of. So we really want to encourage them.
I have a story of my father who didn't know this man very well. He was a friend of mine's dad. And he felt attachment to my father, but it was he said it was in another life. Yeah. And we were all stunned when this happened. This was years ago. And when he heard that my father died, he was bawling. I mean, he didn't know him even that well. He just said that he felt that in another life he was his father.
It could be true.
I mean, how could somebody in this life feel those things?
Practice.
Yeah. Is that?
It's not having an obstacle.
Yeah.
We totally don't buy that. So we can't remember that. In countries where they believe in rebirth, children will frequently talk about past lives, and their parents don't sit there going, yeah, whatever. Their parents go, oh.
And that's a good segue into the question I wanted to explore, and I'll just try to frame it correctly too, because it's 2 questions really. I can investigate impermanence when I see examples in my life, and I can understand it at an intellectual level and understand the challenges, really understanding it subconsciously. So my first question is, where does most of what we know about like the intermediate state, rebirth, what's happening at the time of death come from?
People who are clairvoyant and who know what's happening in someone else's mind, or who remember their own past lives.
And then as Francisco was explaining, and how you said we have that area where we haven't been introduced to reincarnation.
Right.
So it sounds so right away we kind of have a area there.
Yeah.
Are there meditations that kind of, as you practice them, the understanding kind of comes slowly?
I'm not sure how. One is to talk about the continuity of mind, to really meditate on, what happened to this mind, what was the cause of this mind, and so it's the previous moment of that mind, and then going back to you, just going back and 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 back to your first moment of mind. What would be the cause of that? And so some of this is this understanding or at least this openness to the possibility that it's true that the mind is not physical and can't be caused by something physical. So the only thing that could cause a moment of mind is a previous moment of mind. So there's no, so there's no beginning mind. There's no first mind, first thought. It just, we just keep going back and back. So there's just no beginning. The Buddha said he never talked about a beginning because he never found a first life. There was always something before that. And he didn't waste all our time just talking because he wouldn't have had any time to teach anything else. But so it's that way. And we know from physical things that everything has a cause and effect. It may not, that we need to let go of this particular moment of this thing in order to recognize that it has no beginning and no end. Because the physicality aspect of it has no beginning and has no end. It just doesn't, it just comes, whatever. It disintegrates. Of course, unfortunately, this will it'll be a long, long time before it's anything but that plastic thing hogging up space in the landfill. But, so it's that way. Mainly His Holiness says, you kind of can't prove it either way. But long before you're a Buddha, you'll have a realization that will allow you to remember your past lives. It comes from calm abiding. You become clairvoyant with a certain, so you'll start to remember your own past lives. So you don't have to wait till Buddhahood to have the faith of conviction of that.
Well, meditation, he was thinking that certain meditations could help.
I think that just the developing our single point of concentration to the point of calm abiding makes everything easier.
I think especially understanding the hypothesis that something non-physical can't be produced by something physical. That makes a significant amount of sense. And then like you mentioned is we don't know, but we also don't not know, right?
Right. But that's, and so we don't have to grab on either view, since we don't know, and it'd be very hard to prove either way, especially considering the fact that we only have instruments that measure the physical. I mean, there's a reason for that. So, right. So, but the mind, if it's true that you can develop your mind to the point of calm abiding, which brings mental and physical pliancy, which brings certain what they call CDs or accomplishments of mind, one of which is the ability to be clairvoyant. So you have a certain level of clairvoyance, not super, nothing to brag about clairvoyance, but and by the way, that's not practicing purely if that's why you decide to develop calm abiding, because you just want to be able to do those things. But this, so it's this. You will develop these abilities that will, you'll have the experience of it. So then it becomes an unshakable belief.
Yeah, because you've experienced that.
Yeah.
It's not just intellectual. It's not just.
Well, and that's the whole thing about emptiness, is when you have a direct realization of emptiness, that means you're having a direct perception. You're experiencing emptiness. It is not thinking about emptiness anymore. It's not a conceptual idea anymore. So that experience is much more powerful than an inferential understanding, which is also very powerful.
So when you talk about emptiness, we're conceptually.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that is what we have to do first. Okay. And we have to then develop calm abiding so that we can keep our mind so focused on the object that we can actually penetrate, the meaning of emptiness and have an experience of it. So it's not remotely what we, enjoy at the moment. So, but these are long before Buddhahood. So it's not that, you have to wait to be a Buddha. The only thing you have to wait for to be a Buddha is being able to see how all all the karmas fit together. Because it's all of ours. You know, all the dependent risings include every moment of everyone's consciousness. A Buddha, only a Buddha can know those all at once. So that's the only thing you kind of have to. That's why karma is called an extremely big object. Only a Buddha can know all the pieces of the puzzle. So, yeah.
Would I be wrong in presuming that there was mind and Buddhas before humanity began and continue after humanity is gone?
Yep. Because you're just talking about this planet anyway. You're just talking about this planet anyway. Human just means, it doesn't have, we use that word because that describes the kind of body that you need. And, you know, that's what we call each other. That has the kind of physical support for the mind that's able to investigate, be self-aware, you know, transform their mind as opposed to a mosquito. But a human might look completely different in a different universe. So it has nothing to do with form. It just has to do with the physical. It has that. That's what it has to do with form. It needs a physical support. But yeah, there's just no talk of a beginning.
That's a really interesting point.
Okay.
Well, it's just.
I'll take that. I didn't write it, but I'll take it.
Well, it just opens up all sorts of possibilities. Well, literally, a universe of possibilities.
Yeah. It's a big view. You know, I'm really not kidding when I say that. I mean, it takes a long time. So you kind of use what works for you as you learn stuff and kind of go with that. You know, and like that's just why I say if you read something, a paragraph, a sentence, or whatever that's very inspiring to you, write it down, you know, and you let it inspire you. And, you know, and then when you meet up against something you're not so sure about, you just kind of put it on the shelf to check every now and then. Okay, what do I think about that now? You know, and you just kind of go along. In the meantime, if you're working on your mind, your suffering will be reduced, your regrets will be reduced, your good qualities will start to shine. You know, it's sort of like a win-win or a no-lose. You know. Okay, so we don't have to just pray for a precious human rebirth because there is a better place to be born. So, Lama Tsongkhapa, who writes most of the text in this tradition, really encourages us to pray to be born in a pure land. A pure land is a Buddha land. So Buddhas can teach bodhisattvas, you know, in places where everything is dharma. I mean, it's not really a place; it's a state of mind. But it's, you know, that it is this, you know, it's a, you know, I don't even know how. There are no words really to talk about it. We just have to use ordinary words, like it's a place, the pure land. So apparently, Amitabha's pure land is actually accessible to ordinary beings with no realizations. We're not a bodhisattva yet. You know, we haven't generated uncontrived bodhicitta, and it's in our prayer book. I really like this prayer, the prayer to be reborn and the blissful realm of Amitabha, or the King of Prayers. So, and what that does is it makes you able, everything becomes dharma, and you don't have obstacles to carrying that, learning it. It's like going away to the best college. So,
University of Texas.
yeah, must be. You're talking to a Louisiana girl. Can't possibly be. Can't be. So, so bodhicitta is, I mean, this desire to benefit others. You know, to be able to, you know, this whole motivation of wanting to become a Buddha, not because, boy, wouldn't that be cool, but because it's what gives you the skills you need to benefit others. You know, trying to develop, I mean, if you can, the way I think about it is, you know, what hooked me on this path at all is just this idea that maybe there's a way to actually end suffering. You know, I'm cool with that. That sounds really good. But this idea that not, you know, that suffering can end for everyone. That all this hideous suffering we experience from life to life doesn't have to happen at all. Really is meaningful to me. So, and I cause a lot of harm in my life. So it's this idea that being a part of a solution like that, helps me with the baby steps of this life. So, and I kind of go backwards with the path. I kind of look, okay, if a Buddha could exist, what would it take? And I go backwards. And it all makes sense to me. I just don't know if the first step is possible. But I suspect it is. That's about as far as I can go. All right.
This one's about prayer. It's 8 pages.
I know. Do you want to drag?
The one when you recite
Every single day. Let me tell you, it takes no time at all once you get in the habit. If someone dies, they really encourage people to recite the King of Prayers every day to dedicate to a good rebirth for your loved one.
You can't just the text isn't that much to memorize.
I didn't say memorize it. Just read it.
No, just say.
Okay, so our dying thoughts activate the karma that will be the cause of your next rebirth. So, this is the thing. If you read the King of Prayers every day, think how familiar you'll be with it. And those are the kinds of thoughts you'll have. As opposed to worrying about your attachments of this life, you'll be thinking about, your hopes for your opportunities in the next. So, we have to recognize, to make it easy for ourselves, recognizing that these are instructions to eliminate suffering. You have to decide how much time you want to spend on that. We spend a lot of time on a lot of things, and we just have to decide what's most important to us. And I think a lot of us fear death because we fear our thoughts from the time that we know we're going to die to the time that we do die. The regrets and just that waiting, and that just horror of the unknown. And so things of this that can encourage us about that, it may be unknown to us, but, according to beings with much more experience than I have, this is what's possible. So, and it's a good way to go to sleep with virtuous thoughts. So, but it's, and you really do want to, and of course, you can just read a few verses, and then a few verses, and then a few verses. But as you understand the verses, as you gain more knowledge, then the verses actually mean something. So when every now and then when you're reading them, you'll actually be listening, and you'll be going, "Oh yeah, that'd be good." It's it's a process. We want to develop a habit. This is, refuge. If you've taken refuge, which of course is this, very early on in these courses, but this idea, if you've taken refuge, that means you're relying on the teachings to give you the wisdom to use your time well. So, I was so grateful for one student. I was in Australia for one of the general teachings, and so mostly it was just once a month taking these classes that I was in, and every now and then there'd be these public teachings, public talks, and one of the students, asked, "Well, I hear all this stuff about precious human rebirth. How about a Pure Land? Why not we put in?" I guess he's there and goes, "Yeah, that'd be good. Good thing to go for." So. I'm going to change my prayers right now. Oh, this is another thing to think about. So as we explore emptiness, as we learn more and more about this idea that things don't exist the way we, way they appear to us, like death is some permanent end, that we need to remember that it appears that way to us, but that's not true. It actually isn't an end, it's a transition to the next life. It's totally empty of existing that way. So just like when something, difficult's happening, we can go, oh, this is impermanent. The experience of death in this life is impermanent.
I like how Mommy Ashley talks about it in life, death, and after death is like coming home.
Yeah. If we get familiar with the process, it will not seem strange. It won't feel like, I think that's how Emily felt. I think that's why she was just, it was just amazing to watch someone have total, confidence that there's something next. And that she had done, a good job of working on her mind in this life. And so she wasn't worried about what's next, And she had her first grandchild was in the womb of her daughter. She had a lot of things to grieve, to leave behind. But she really was able to just have her bags packed and be ready to go. So, and she had a really horrendously painful illness. So, but it just is one of these things. It's that if your mind's in the right place, you can tolerate anything happening. Because our mind is not physical. So think about that the next time you're in pain. Recognize that the mind observing the pain is not in pain. That they're separate. And the more we can focus not on the pain, but on how we keep our minds calm or peaceful or just accepting what is happening, the less we'll suffer, even though the pain may not change, the physical pain. I don't even know if I'm going to read this one. The karmic seed that ripens is whichever is heaviest, the strongest habit, which could have been planted hundreds, even millions of lifetimes ago. If they're equal, the seed that was planted first will be the oldest one, will be the one that ripens. Remember that this can be a virtue. It could be the heaviest positive thing you've ever done. So, it's my tendency to focus on the negative that makes me go towards the negative things I've done. But this is the advantage of really trying to develop a habit that's focused on things like gratitude, like how can I be of help, these kinds of minds, not the mind of, what's wrong with this picture, So we really want to keep working on countering that habit, because a positive mind is a condition for a positive seed to ripen. So reading something inspiring is helpful, to get your mind just in a kind of, oh yes, I can do this and I want to do this. And there's, blah, 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 You read these wonderful, inspiring thoughts of people who are ahead of me on the path, and it's helpful.
Because we really have to watch what we kind of expose ourselves to. Huh?
There is no kidding. I mean, it really does matter what books you read, what you watch, what music you listen to. Because it's really garbage in, garbage out. It's just, so if you have a tendency to watch things that where you're rejoicing on, the bad guys getting killed. Not a good plan. Really. I mean, if you can watch things from a Dharma perspective, watch things and have compassion for the bad guys, not watch them as the director is trying to get you to feel, but to watch them from the perspective of how can I look at this from a different angle? Then it doesn't really matter what you watch, but it's, Rinpoche watched Pretty Woman one time because Richard Gere is a big Buddhist and a benefactor of His Holiness. And he just wanted to see if there was any Dharma in it. He goes, nope, there's no Dharma in it. Just imagine the other monks and nuns having to watch it with him. And have compassion for that. So anyway, but really, it really matters, how we care for our mind. So, so positive stuff is helpful. Look at your mind. And if you have some habits that are really not very helpful, try to use that. There's all sorts of stuff available that helps put you in a different frame of mind, So, we don't have to just reject it. We just want to be discerning about what we expose ourselves to, what are our habits. I used to love all those kind of TV shows that kept you on the edge of the seat, and then I realized, this is painful. What am I doing to myself? I'm stressing, I'm stressed at work and I come home and stress myself out over TV shows. This is kind of stupid. So, you want to check, what is this doing for your mind? So just because you're gritting your teeth about something other than work doesn't mean it's a good habit.
Now, I don't want to push a lot here, but can you look at it as training?
This is the thing. Really.
Training and guarding your mind. I know that.
Yeah, but you have to see where you are, because it is so easy to cheer for the good guys and have no compassion for the bad guys when it's fiction. And that's a bad habit to train your mind. And even just, we have so much violence in our entertainment world. And this idea that responding with violence as a go-to habit is not one we want to practice. That feeling of power of, I can defeat evil, you're talking about, this habit of mind that says killing other people who don't do what you like is acceptable, so we really want to watch what our minds are doing. And then let's not talk about, romantic comedies. Let's, let's feed attachment. Let's feed unrealistic expectations. Let's feed all the bad we have that have to do with desire. It's just nuts. So we really want to watch that. And all the love songs. Country music all by itself. It's a category all by itself to be avoided. So, because they're all about pulling your heartstrings in an unrealistic, unhelpful way. So you really do want to be mindful, In fact, most women reach a point where they realize they really don't want to know all the words to all the songs from the 50s because they really aren't very nice about them. So, it's like, why do I know these words? So, anyway, okay. So I'll send you some meditations. Some of them, it's just, it's really about like reviewing them because they're long or you just want to kind of get familiar with it. And then you kind of learn them slowly. Because basically thinking about death is intended to be something you never give up. You never stop thinking about it. You want to practice, and next time we'll be talking about what happens to the mind at the time of death, and which falling asleep is said to be similar to it, and so you can practice that. It'll make more sense when we start talking about it. But anyway, so some of this is just, trying to get familiar with it, because then you'll be able to just have a short version of it in your own mind. Yeah. So, okay, not to be discouraged. To be continued. So now just dedicate all your efforts after a long day to take care of your mind and to help hopefully, you really want to think that, hopefully this has been a good activity for you, not a waste of your time, and that it will not just benefit yourself, but you make the prayer that it will, because it benefits your mind, that means it will benefit the people that are around you, because it affects your actions of body, speech, and mind. Because the less we have to regret at the time of death means that we treated those around us carefully. So that's good news. So we dedicate it to the point where there's no suffering sentient being, whatever, all of our merits not exhaust until there are no suffering sentient beings left in samsara. Don't try to picture where they'll all be. It doesn't get crowded. They are in enlightenment space.
I have two quick announcements.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Since we have 2 students that will be taking tests, we are lucky to have this new day, well, not new day, but a practice in a month on November 10th, Saturday. It will be a day of meditation. There's flyers on the bulletin.
So it's a practice day for those who are trying to get certified in taking Discovering Buddhism. But everybody's invited. So it's a whole day of meditations. And this particular one will be the meditations for mind and its potential and how to meditate. So check out, and I won't be leading it. So Jackie, who's a great meditation facilitator, will be leading it.
And it'll be from 10 to 4 on Saturday, November 10th.
That'll be on the calendar.
Yes.
But save the date on yours, because that's, so, and you don't have to, I think it will, you can't commit to the whole day, except for those of you who are required to show up for the whole day. You can commit to either, the morning or the afternoon if you cannot spare a whole day. But you can't just drop in, because that's kind of disruptive. But, but we'll have some firm information on that theoretically in advance.
And the other one I wanted to say, if anyone is interested in the Vajrasattva practice, which is the purification practice, that's the meditation. Jackie will be leading on Monday.
Oh, great.
For the visualization meditation this Monday. So feel free to join us for that too. Thank you.
Thanks. Nicole.
Okay, so it's very simple.